Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here from simpleprogrammer.com. And today in this video, we're going to be talking about 6 steps that you need to know in order to launch your game. I know a lot of you have wanted to launch your game. You're aspiring game developers out there, and something that I've always been interested in. I've launched some very small games, but I've got an expert here who has just launched a pretty successful game, and someone who I actually, even though I don't do as much programming or game development stuff today, I watch his channel because he's just got really good content. And his name is Tim, and his channel is Game Dev Underground. So welcome, Tim.
What's up? Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I saw your game launch, and I've been following your channel and a lot of your content. It's pretty addicting. I remember I was watching one of your live streams in Twitch where you're making this gnome game.
Oh, the gnome game. It's infamous now.
It was great. It was fun.
Yeah.
Especially love the sound effects on that one.
Game design is one of those things where it's like it's all the cool stuff about programming and technical stuff, but then you get to just do crazy stuff and make your own worlds. And it's I think to me it's the ultimate form of art and technical challenge because it pulls in programming, design, audio, all this stuff into one package, and it's really good for people that have trouble concentrating on one thing for a while.
Yeah,
so works for me.
So, it's one of the questions I get a lot from developers is how to launch a game. There's a lot of confusion about what the steps are. Like, how do you actually do this? How do you actually become successful at doing this? And how do you make sure, I think a lot of people are like, well, how do I market a game, or how do I even, go about doing this aside from just building it? So you just launched, give maybe some of the details of the game that you just launched here.
Yeah, so I launched a game called Philophobia, The Fear of Love. It's an actual word, it's an actual condition where people are actually scared of love. It's a thing. And it's a game where love is literal hell, and every enemy in the game is made out of hearts. And it just launched this past Valentine's Day. So it was my first commercial launch, and I think it did really, really well. And I'm super excited, especially because I did no traditional press. I did no influencers. I did none of the traditional routes of marketing. And I think I did well above the average of what a normal game does. So it was really fun. And it was also really terrifying because I've never poured my heart and soul into a product and then been tasked with the thing of trying to sell it to people. So that was fun.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I bought the game. I downloaded it. It was cool. I loved the concept and the level design. It was very creative. So really cool game. What about do you want to share some of the numbers? Are you comfortable sharing the numbers?
Yeah, totally. So in the first 4 days of the launch period, which I consider the launch window because it launched February 10th, Valentine's Day was February 14th. So that's like my period. I did just over $7 grand.
Oh wow, nice.
In sales. Yeah.
Good.
And that with a $10 game, that's not, super easy to do. And also I did it without a Steam launch, which for those of you that don't know, Steam is like the #1 place to put your game. I didn't go to Steam. I didn't do any press outreach whatsoever. No emails to press sites or anything. I didn't do any influencers. I didn't give any YouTubers or streamers the key or anything. This was all just my audience and stuff. And I did all that. And I was pretty happy with that number because my objective was 10 grand in the first year. And we got more than 70% in 4 days. So I was happy.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good. That's really good. Well, yeah, I'm glad. I thought it was going to be successful. I felt like you were doing the right things to launch it. So let's talk about that. Well, let's talk about the 6 steps that you went through and that developers should go through when they're launching their game. What's the first thing they should do?
Let's go step number 1. Step number 1 is the one that everybody tells you and you avoid. You got to start.
Yeah.
I spent 15 years going different routes. Okay, when I was 16, I was making video games. I was so excited. I graduated high school. Tim, you got to get a real job. Tim, that video game stuff's not going to work out. Tim, go do something go get a job. So I ended up in marketing, one of the most boring things you could possibly think of. Turned out to be I actually had a lot of fun. The whole psychology aspect of marketing, like what words do I use to convince somebody to click a buy button? That part was super interesting to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
I spent years doing that. Hated my life. Got more and more into it, just got better at it. I started doing it for clients. And then I started to feel ethically compromised because now I'm dealing with these clients and my job is to sell shit and I don't believe in what they're selling. And my job is to convince people to buy stuff I don't think they should buy. So that was kind of the turning point for me. I'm just like, I'm not going to kill my soul just to make some money.
Yeah.
Sold the company. Thought like, oh shit, what do I do now? What do I do now? And then I was like, oh, well, I remember them video games. I'm like, all right, let's do that. But it took me, that's not like a 10-year gap. I always wanted to make video games. Why didn't I stick to video games? I had to start, I had to take the leap. I had to say, hey, I'm gonna do this no matter what. Like, I don't care at that point. Like, and it was a weird shift in me because it went from like video games are cool to like, you know what? If I don't care if I'm homeless, I will be sitting on the fucking street making video games. That's what I want to do. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, and at that point I had acquired a bunch of skills, web design, a bunch of fallback skills. So whenever I got broke, I could like go door to door and make $500 websites or some shit. But yeah, man, the starting is like the biggest deal. And I run Game Dev Underground, right? It's a huge channel about game development. The number one thing is, Tim, I spent the last 2 years watching YouTube videos and like I bought a Udemy course. I didn't go through it, but like, what tips do you have?
Right.
Fucking get started, dude.
Exactly.
So yeah, tip number one, absolutely just start, please. Just build something, make something, do something. There's no excuse. There's thousands of videos on YouTube. You got the entirety of information known to man at your fingertips, at your device, right? Just do it.
Yeah, no, I like that. I agree. I agree 100%. That's so many people spend so much time researching and learning, and they don't just do. And it's like you can learn it. I always equate it to like if you're trying to learn to play golf, you could read a whole bunch of books on golf and you could watch videos on golf and you could spend years like learning how to hold the club and all of this stuff. And you were still going to suck. Like there's no substitute for going out there and actually playing. Like you're still going to have to actually do it. And the value that you get, at least that I find from learning, is after you've actually done the thing. So if you just go out there with very little knowledge and you start trying to make a game, for instance, and then you go back and now you go to books and now you go to tutorials and now you go to get help and now you fill in the gaps. Now it hits so much better because you understand, what's important because you have all these questions in your head, but people are afraid. They're so afraid to like to not know what they're doing because it's uncomfortable, right? So they don't start.
Yeah, you brought up a good point too. The value you place on knowledge when you're learning something from a book, you don't know what's important and what's not. You're just trying to take it all in, and there's a lot of wasted space in there. When you're trying to make a project and you're trying to make this guy move from left to right, and you Google how to make him move left from right, that is extremely relevant and valuable knowledge for exactly what you're doing. And you can only take in the important bits rather than like, all this stuff that's going to overwhelm you or get you scared. And so many people like, they'll watch a video and they'll be like, well, the best way to design a game is like this. And then they'll obsess over that. Oh, I can't do it the best way, so I can't, you know what I mean? Like no, there's no right way to design it. If somebody saw my code, like dude, all the time when I stream games, people are like, oh, this is inefficient code. Tim, you're using a drag and drop program. I'm making video games. What are you doing?
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters. Matters is actually, just getting to work.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. Trying to be perfectionist is not the way to go. Now, what about for you? You said that you had your marketing company. Did you immediately start doing game development after you sold that company, or I wasn't sure on when the gap? And how long ago was that? How long have you been basically developing games full time, or as much as full time as you can?
Yeah, sold the company in 2015, and then I just I was like mentally just gone. I had like a mental breakdown in the parking lot of a Starbucks after that.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, I just took a road trip in a Dodge Challenger across the United States, didn't do nothing for months, and then kind of felt empty because I didn't have anything to do.
Hmm.
And I was just like, I don't want to go back to marketing, but like, what do I do? And then so it was probably a couple months after that, early 2016, maybe I started making games again. And that was a whole journey. But then I started the YouTube channel not long after that. And that was scary too, because here's a dude that doesn't really know anything about game dev trying to make a YouTube channel about game dev. And, I was scared what people were going to say, or not a real game developer, any of that stuff, but had to have the courage to just do it. And that's another thing. You got to start. You want to make content, you just got to start.
Well, that's
be bad.
That's what you become it by doing it, right? It's like, that's the key. Is it's like, now you're a YouTuber, now you're a game developer. But if you just waited till someone gave you permission, or you got the little certification that says it, then you'd never do it. So
what's crazy too is I actually was posting YouTube videos in like 2006 or 2007, like before Google acquired YouTube. And I was working on some music stuff. I used to be a rapper, and I would post that kind of stuff. And I was really into that. And I started posting like video blogs and all kinds of stuff. And same thing with the game design. Like, this is all stuff I did as a kid, but like, I was convinced that you can't do this. It's not viable. I let other people talk me out of it. Yeah. And it was like the thing that I was destined to do, both YouTube and game dev. It was just like, I needed to do those things, but I took a 10-year hiatus because I got discouraged by what other people said.
So do you ever think about where you would be now? Like, if you had those 10 years, if you had been on that path?
I do. You know what I got to say though? As crazy as marketing is, it is probably one of the most valuable skills anybody could possibly learn.
That's true. That is
You
true.
know what I mean? Because marketing taught me not just how to sell shit, but also how to have the empathy to understand another human being. Like, if I have to convince somebody to click a button, I have to really understand what's going to make them click that button.
Right. Exactly. Very true.
That makes me a better game designer too, because I can, this person's going to play. When they get to this point, they're going to think, they're going to try and jump, all of that stuff helps me understand humans, which makes me a better YouTuber, right? Because I can make content to help people. So I don't regret it for a second. I wonder what would have happened if I had more courage, because I could have been making games while marketing the whole time.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
And if there was probably one thing that I could go back in time and tell little kid Tim, it would be just to have a little more courage. Because I think courage and confidence are two different things, right? Confidence comes from the experience of doing something. Courage is doing it when you're terrified of doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would have had a little more courage. But I'm happy with how my life ended up turning out, I think.
That's good. That's a good perspective. And I totally agree with you on the confidence versus courage. Confidence, you can't fake it. You can't make it. It has to be natural. Whereas courage, you can choose to have at any moment. Anyone can choose courage. It's, it's a choice. So, okay. So step one, obviously take action. I totally agree with that. And that's the most critical step in anything. What about step two?
So step two, I would say you got to go for quantity. And this goes against what everyone told me. This goes against even like what my default thing was, because the first thing I wanted to do was make the next Halo, right? Like Halo was what inspired me to make games when I was a kid. I want to make the next Master Chief Saga. I want to go for this crazy, epic, massive game. But what helped me out the most with this game launch was making 25 other games while I made this one. I made 25 in 2 years.
Wow. Yeah.
You learn more. You learn crazy things during every game launch. And in game dev world, there's a thing called a game jam where you, in 48 hours or in a week or whatever, you sit down and you make a video game from start to finish, whatever it is. And they have a theme. And you saw the Gnome game. That was so this theme was combining two incompatible genres. And I'm like, that theme's stupid. How do you combine two incompatible genres? They're incompatible.
Right.
But it forces you to be creative, and you're on a time limit. Right. So those two things together, you can make some cool stuff. We ended up making a game where you're a gnome fighting through a garden, and an old man is trying to place these tomato towers that throw shit at you, and you're trying to protect your gnomes. And we made it like a Call of Duty style, like protect the gnomes, like crazy epic explosions everywhere and gnomes dying. And there's no way in hell I would ever made an invasion gnome game, right, by myself. But with the game jam and all that stuff, and then we were streaming it too, so we had a bunch of community ideas, and it just turned into this great collaborative, beautiful game that's still probably one of my favorites that I made. And I learned so much doing that. I learned all kinds of little details about how to make juice. How do you make shooting feel good? How do you make dying feel fun? Like the gnomes, like they scream when they die, like that makes their death impactful, right? So little tiny details that I never would have learned otherwise. And you do that 20 some times, you start to pick up a bag of tricks, right? Like, now I know, okay, I made the shooting game, so I know what shooting feels good. I made the dying game, so I know what death feels good. We made another game called Space Goats, where it's a game about space goats shitting cupcakes when they eat Vikings, because I let the community decide everything that went in the game, and that's what you end up with when you let the internet make your decisions. But that game, the gameplay sucks, but we spent the majority of the time working on an intro cutscene and the world building, and like how do I make a game about space goats and space monkeys running from an interdimensional clown interesting, right? So I learned a little bit of narrative there, right? And that narrative stuff went into Philophobia. So there's 1,000 examples like that there's no way I could have learned any of that stuff had I not decided to go for quantity. And a lot of people are resistant when you say go for quantity over quality, because they're like, no, you should spend your life making the most amazing thing and you should pour your heart and soul into it. And I get where they're coming from, right? But you don't make that epic quality without going through the trenches with the quantity. Right? We talked about the confidence stuff. You get confidence in your ability by doing something over and over again. And making games over and over again is whatever. I read a story. Matter of fact, I might even saw it on your channel. I don't even know. But there was a pottery teacher.
Pottery.
It was on your. Okay, I knew it. So he said they would judge on either the quality of one piece or by weight, and the people that ended up being judged by weight were had the highest quality pieces. Right? So true.
No, I totally agree with you. I actually, I haven't done a huge amount of game development, but I taught a couple of courses on Pluralsight on game development. And when I was learning game development, I started off with Pong. And then I went to a shooter game, right? I had this progression, and I had to go through, and I mean, I wanted to create this awesome, grandiose type of game, but it was like, well, can you make Pong first, right? It's like, okay, now I made Pong. Like, I didn't want to make Pong, and
Nobody
I didn't want to make
Pong.
I didn't want to make, the basic Gradius, like, shooter, and I didn't want to like make, whatever Pac-Man or something like that. I forget exactly where I went from there, but it was like I had to do those things in order to progress, to be able to get to the point where I could build something better. I mean, I've never built my magnum opus, but it was so important. Like I if I had tried to just like build some grand game, I wouldn't have made any progress. I wouldn't have done anything. I wouldn't have, have really learned that much. I would have been so focused on the detail. But yeah, it's so true in life. I think that you just like it, and people disagree with it, but quantity over quality at first, at least, is, and you'll produce higher quality. Same thing on YouTube. I mean, shit, when I first started making videos, I sucked. Like, I could have spent a lot of time trying to improve, like produce the best quality videos I possibly could, but it was so much better to just do a ton of videos to the point where I'm just super comfortable on camera and I'm better at speaking and communicating my points. And that quantity actually made the quality better. So
100%, dude. I did the same thing, 365 videos in 365 days. And dude, people here should go watch my interview with you a year and a half ago.
Oh yeah,
I'm like a timid little mouse, man. I was, because one, like, you were like a celebrity. I was like, oh my god, this guy with crazy amount of subscribers that I look up to is gonna come on my channel. It's amazing. But also, like, I sucked on camera. I wouldn't say I sucked, but I wasn't as good as I was now, or at least as comfortable. And 365 things in 365 doesn't matter what it is.
Exactly.
365 times in a year, you're going to get better at it. So it just, I would go on that all day.
Awesome. So what's next? What's step 3?
Step number 3. So this goes along with the quantity. And I really, really believe this. And I haven't seen this talked about anywhere else, but maybe it's out there. I think it's easier to discover something that's unique or interesting or fun rather than design it.
Okay.
Step number 3 is unique hook. But how do you design a unique hook? And what is a unique hook? A unique hook is something that's interesting or unique about your game that makes it different from every other game. I say I have a game called Philophobia, the Fear of Love. It's a game where love is literal hell and all the enemies are hearts. Right? Where else can you find? How are you going to confuse that game with a different game? You put that next to Skyrim, there's no comparison. On top of that, the game is visually distinct, right? Like it has a very unique style to it. So there's no way that anybody could ever confuse my game with someone else's game. Because if they can, that's going to cause some problems. Well, both in like the name, if you have a generic name, like a lot of people make sci-fi games with like generic names and stuff like Star Warrior or some, thing like that. That's going to get lost. So aesthetically, but also like name-wise or just branding-wise, like just have something that's unique. But how do you design that? How do you start from scratch and make something unique? Like everybody wants to, but then we all end up, making similar stuff that just kind of fades in obscurity. Well, the great thing about quantity, something's going to happen along those lines. You make 20 or 30 games, you're going to have one where you're like, you know what? That one's cool. That one's interesting. That one's got something unique to it, right? And I think, like I said, it's easier to kind of discover that than design it. And Philophobia came out of that. That was a one of those things where like the game actually started 2 ways. One, I'm weird. I like to keep track of unique and cool words. Every time I hear a cool word, I write it down. I have like a list of just cool sounding words. And Philophobia was like one of those cool words. Like there's a phobia of love. It's just I don't know, it had some kind of ring to it that I liked. And but on top of that, then I made this game where like I challenged myself to make a game with 4 colors and basic shapes because I didn't have any artistic ability. And at that point in time, the character was a cube and the enemies were hearts. And that kind of fit into that 4 shape or basic shape thing with 4 colors. I ended up learning artistic ability throughout making all of these games and stuff. And the actual Philophobia that shipped looks much better, but you could still see the trailer. The first trailer has a cube and just a heart, and that's it. Solid colors. And that was something I discovered. I'm like, okay, the whole shadow mechanic, this game has like a line of sight mechanic to where you can only see where the character sees, even though it's like full on side screen 2D side scroller. So it's unique. I discovered that. My next project is going to be revamping one of my 25 game projects because I discovered something else interesting about it. And I just think a lot of people, they want to build, like, I guess it depends on what your objectives are. If you want to make commercial games like I do, then you have to think from the market's perspective. But if you just want to make whatever the hell you want to make, it doesn't matter. Just have fun, make a bunch of stuff. But the unique hook is super important. I think it's important not just in games, but like in software and startups, like whatever business you build, you need to be at least solving a problem that is there. Entertainment's a little weird because there's just it's a different perspective, but that's where that unique hook comes in. It's kind of like solving the problem in a startup. But yeah, I would say that's step number 3 for sure.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that reminds me of the marketing, the USP, the unique selling principle, right? That's like the same thing. That makes a lot of sense, and I can see too how, like what you were talking about before with the constraints, help you to find that, right? Because when you've got constraints, like you put that constraint on yourself of only using 4 colors or in the shapes and 4 basic shapes, and that caused you to to build some of that. I think to have that kind of unique element of it, and that hook to be it forces you to be more creative. I suppose. Totally. So okay, so yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to think of what of examples that I've seen. I mean, there's games, yeah, for certain, like I would think like, like Super Meat Boy and Braid and like all of those kind of those classic, like the kind of independent, like home run games. They all seem to have some kind of a unique hook
They're very
to them,
distinct.
right?
You can't confuse them with a different game. That's the main
Right.
thing. Is like when a lot of people they want to make their open world RPG, or they want to make their first person shooter, or they want to make these games, they end up making a game that looks like all the other games.
Mm-hmm.
And even like, let's say it goes on Reddit and it goes viral and you got 35,000 people looking at it. It looks like all the other games. So they're not even going to know what the hell it is or where they've seen it before. Or, it's got to be distinctive in some way. In multiple ways is even better, right? Like there's a lot of hooks for Philophobia. Like one, it's the fear of love. Love is literal hell. It's got a lot of religious undertones in it. All the enemies are made out of hearts. We have giant spider demons made out of hearts. It's crazy. It launched around Valentine's Day, right? Yeah. There's like I stacked the blocks as much in my favor to make this as distinctive as possible, and people still tell me, they're like, I've never seen anything like that before. Like, you know what I mean? And that's not just, I didn't just come up with that. It's a long process of like trying things out and messing with stuff and coming up with it. That's why I think like I said, it's easier to discover that stuff than to design it.
Yeah, it makes sense too. I think it kind of resonates with your target audience too, right? The fear of love, right? There's a lot of video gamers, right? A lot of game developers probably could relate to some of these things, right? It's a different category of people than if you're marketing to salespeople or football fans, right? Who maybe, I mean, sure, they could relate to fear of love, but it's probably going to hit more deeply with this particular audience, right? So,
and it really has, like, the game is also based on the 5 stages of grief, and there's literal like 5 stages. Like the demons you fight at the end, the bosses, are like the actual physical representations of denial, anger, bargaining, depression. Those kind of
cool.
things. Yeah, and so that's another thing I forgot. That's another hook that it's got in it. And the marketing around the game was designed like this. This was a game that was inspired by a breakup, and it almost took my life. Like I was not suicidal, but like I was almost there. I was in a deep, dark place, man. And the original ending of that game was so fucked up. And I had to like, this is the result of like some deep, dark emotions that I poured into this game. And people have told me, like, I played through this game, I just lost somebody, and the game helped me deal with that thing, or this. And that means, like, to create entertainment that can literally help people, that's awesome. Like that, I didn't even realize that, because for me, the stages of grief were about the breakup, but a lot of people, they said that it helped them with depression. They said that the game has various different things that happen, and it helped them with the scenarios that they went through. And it's like, damn, dude, like that, that's one of those things that just came from trying to just be me too. I would say maybe that's 4A or 4B, is just like pour little of you in it. Because look, if I tried to make Halo, do you think Bungie or 343 Industries can make a better Halo? They make the Halo, right? I can't make a better Halo than the Halo makers ever, but I can be the best goddamn Tim Russwick there ever was, right? Like I can make the best Tim Russwick game. People ask me like, hey Tim, what would you do if I copied the Philophobia mechanic or that? And I was like, I don't care. You can't copy the soul of that game. Right? Like it's got there's so many pieces of me in that game. If you try and copy everything that I did, you're always going to be a step behind me.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a musician, right? That like there's a lot of other musicians that get inspiration. Oh, it sounds like, this guy sounds like a Jimi Hendrix. Well, yeah, he listened to a lot of Jimi Hendrix and he got ideas. And then he built his own thing from it. You can't completely copy an artist. That's the beautiful thing about art, so.
No, yeah, and figuring out what you're good at and like playing to those strengths. Like, I don't have a very strong artistic style, so the game is very simple and it's got a lot of simple shapes in it. I made a game with enemies made 100% out of hearts, which are basic shapes, based on the constraint that I have of not being a crazy artist, right? But I turned what some people would call a weakness, not having some basic artistic ability into a strength of the game. All of the enemies are made out of hearts, and it's a game about love being literal hell, right? Like, so you can do things like that. You just got to have the courage to make those steps and like just own it. Just, you know, stand up and say, this is what it is, and it's a part of me, and you know, that's what it is.
Awesome. All right. What about what are we on? 4, I think. Step 4.
Oh, did I say 4B? I mean 3B. Yeah,
3B.
4.
Okay, yeah, 4.
4.
Yeah.
4 is another one that's going to come off as generic, but it's important, and you gotta finish that damn game. You gotta so many, and this isn't just in game dev, dude.
Yeah.
I got addicted to starting startups. I started 5 different companies while I was working at my marketing company. None of them even got launched. I just decided to build some cool startup tool, some web application, something that never went anywhere. And then I got shiny object syndrome. I'm like, oh, this thing is cool. Let me try that, and abandon my project and start over. Right? You got to finish. You got to finish what you start, man. You have to be a finisher. You have to decide. And this is a common theme of your channel too.
Definitely.
Like you have to. I've stopped completely starting any project that I don't 100% want to finish. Like I make that commitment now.
Yeah.
Philophobia was rough, man, because I picked a deadline way ahead of, you know, when I should have. And I was working on the game 3 hours up until launch, like 3 hours before launch, like building the game, which is a no. You don't do that. You don't mess with production software 3 hours before you're supposed to push it. But like, you know what? I was determined. There was no way it was not going to happen. And I made it happen, and I had to push a bunch of day 1 patches because the build that shipped had a major bug on Boss 3 that was unbeatable. That was fun. And then I published a patch to fix it, and I left God mode on. So patch has invincibility, and then patch 3 I fixed that, like all within like 2 hours.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was determination. Like it was gonna happen. There's no plan B. There's no like, oh well, maybe I can just delay it. No, it was gonna happen. You have to finish it. You have to. If you do not finish the stuff that you start, you won't get anywhere. Even if you don't think it's worth it, even if you came up with a better idea, you have to start getting that mindset of like being a finisher.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're preaching to the choir big time on this one for sure. I am in 100% agreement. Like becoming a finisher was a thing that changed my life because I started so many projects. I started a bunch of games. I started, you know, software projects, websites, companies, books, all that stuff, and I got nothing for it. I mean, all I did was spend a lot of time that was wasted until I started finishing. In fact, I think the very first thing that I really finished was an Android app that I made for running, and I did not want to finish that thing. I did not. I was like, at first it was fun. I was learning Android development, and then I got to the point where it was like I got a UI designer that had a UI that they designed for me, and I was like, I have no idea how to implement this in Android. I was like, I don't even like, this thing looks beautiful. Like, how the hell am I going to code this? And I just said, you know what, John, you have to finish. You have to finish. And I sat down and I figured out how to make the little rounded corners effect. And I wrote my own custom controls. And like, I was like, this has to be done. And just little by little, and then I got the thing done, and that changed my life. You know, I didn't make a huge amount of money from the app, maybe, you know, $5,000-$10,000 over the course of the app, which is decent. But what it changed was now my perspective was like, okay, I'm going to finish things. And that's when I started doing Pluralsight courses and finishing those courses and creating my blog and all of this. Like everything Simple Programmer wouldn't exist at all had I not become a finisher. So I'm in 100% agreement with you. So many people, I feel like, and this is a good question for you about this, which is especially for game developers. I think that, and maybe you felt this way too, is that you're writing this game, right? And then you had this great idea for it, and you just feel like the code is shitty and it's just not really that good anymore in the design, and it's not really like, it doesn't seem like it's a really good idea, and it's not really fun, and there's so much stuff that needs to be done. But it would be so much easier if you just started over and created a new game and made a really good one this time. What do you say to that?
Holy shit, you just described the last year of my life. that is literally, you know, that leads us into number 5, which is like avoid the fear and do it anyway. Because dude, Exactly what you just described is exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
This game sucks. It's not good. The code is horrible. I'm really surprised it doesn't start people's computers on fire. Like, I'm surprised by that.
Yeah.
It was built in like a drag and drop editor that was not remotely designed to do what I did with it. It's an actual HTML5 game, which I shipped as a as a desktop game. So it's just a website wrapped into an executable.
Mhm.
There are like so many things where I'm just like, there's no way. And then watching people on launch day actually play through it and have fun, I was just like, this doesn't make sense. What's wrong with it? Tell me what's wrong with it. You guys are liars. You're saying you're having fun. You're liars. Stop it.
Right.
Like, still, like, they're telling me they're having fun. I'm not believing them.
Yeah.
If I didn't make that decision, and that decision is not hard or not easy, by the way. I should say that, like, one of the main things that gave me the push to finish the game is the fact that I had a YouTube channel and I had an audience and I had all these people waiting for it. And I had come out with a video like called #finish it. That was our thing, like finish it, but finish shit, like that's how they saw me. And that gave me like a responsibility to do it for them. Like, just to like, I can't be the giant hypocrite here.
Yeah.
But dude, in no way did I think it was ready. I did not think it was fun. I did not think it was good. I still have doubts about that. I still have doubt. Like, every time somebody says something's good, I'm like, oh, you watch my YouTube videos, don't you? Yeah, you're biased. So like, I'm fighting through like my insecurities and my thoughts and low self-esteem here and there, and like all that stuff is going on in my head. But I did the shit anyway, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I did it anyway. And that's where that courage comes in. That fear, I mean, I'm not some old wise wizard. I don't know if it ever goes away, but I know I am not the person that I portray. People tell me on streams and stuff, how do you be so confident, Tim? How do you do this? How do you try crazy things? How do you put yourself out there? How do you, like, dude, when we were finishing the ending of the game live on Twitch, because I streamed 6 days a week, 6 hours a day to finish the game the last like 2 months. We were finishing the ending and we're putting all this stuff together, and I started crying. I started crying on stream, which is rough to do, man. Like, this thing was so emotional because it was like the end of like 4 years worth of work, but also it was like the end of the closure to like that whole thing that inspired the game, the whole like really rough breakup. But also it's happening in front of like 50 people, and I'm sitting here like crying, and I'm just like, oh fuck, man. To be in that position is not easy, and people say that I make it look easy, but it's not the confidence, it's the courage. That's the skill you need.
Exactly.
You have to push through when you're terrified, when you don't want to do it, when you feel like laying in bed, when you think everyone's going to hate the game. Like, you have to do it anyway. And I wish someone would have told me that when I was little, because like I said, that's why I went into marketing. That's why I stopped making video games. That's why I didn't do so many things that I found enjoyable, because other people told me it was not viable, or whatever reason that I told myself. Like, you have to push past that stuff and do the thing that you want to do and be determined to be a finisher and work past the fear. And number 5 is absolutely like work past the fear in development, the fear in starting, the fear in finishing, the fear in marketing, the fear in all the stuff. Push past it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, and it's so critical to understand that you can choose to have courage, and it's funny too, because you asked, like, does this ever go away? And I can tell you the reason why I could describe so clearly what you felt in developing the game and shipping it, and that fear, is because every single project, every single thing I do, that's how I feel. Every book I've written, I could pull the books off my bookshelf and be like, oh, that shit, I wish I didn't make this chapter, or the writing sucked here, or this is not like what I envisioned, right? And every video I make, I'll record videos. Sometimes I'll batch record videos in a day, and I'll do like 10 videos, and be like, every single one of those videos sucked. I felt so awkward on camera. It just didn't click off right. I didn't say anything intelligent, I just said stupid shit. But then I drop them in the Dropbox folder anyway. I'm like, these are going out anyway. The
Yeah.
book is going out anyway, right? Whatever it is, I create a course, a website, what I'm selling, all this stuff. It very rarely, almost every single time, but you got to just fight that fear and just say, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be a finisher. I'm gonna be someone who chooses courage and is not afraid to get. I'm going to get out of my comfort zone, and
It's so
that's how you grow.
counterintuitive too.
Yeah.
Like you would think that, okay, how do you be successful? Well, you work really hard on something. You put in all of the effort. You make it perfect. You polish the shit out of that until it's perfect, and then you launch the thing. But that has not been my experience at all.
Right.
The more you spend on that time trying to make it perfect, the less time you have like just running through the chaos and dealing with all the issues and the real problem. Like a lot of times when you build something, like game design is interesting because you'll make a game, you'll have somebody play it, and that person will do the exact opposite of whatever you think they're going to do. Like I remember one of my first platformer games, I built this really cool platformer, and like you ran from left to right and you would jump over obstacles, and it's crazy. And I gave it to my girlfriend at the time, and the first thing she does instead of going right is go left. And there was a ledge there, and you just fall off and break the game, and everything crashes. And I just remember thinking, like, in no point did I ever expect somebody to go left, right?
Yeah.
Like, but you have to go through all of the crazy stuff, and you have to push stuff out there early to understand all those little intricacies. Like that going left when they should go right is a metaphor for like software development and all kinds of stuff. Like users do weird shit. And if you are sitting alone building something, there's no way that you're building the optimal thing, because the optimal thing is designed for people that are not you, right? And you have to figure out what the people that are not you are going to do or say or interact with, or how do they see it, or what do they find interesting about it? Because some of the things that people find interesting about my game are not the things that I find interesting about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I highly value the story. I think the story is one of the most important things. Almost nobody said anything about the story. They're like, oh, I love hard, challenging platformers. I love the bosses. They love all the stuff I hate. Right. So
Exactly.
like I thought the game wasn't fun. So like I valued the story, but they like the game apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah, you gotta get other people involved for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because you can't know. You can't. I remember, I forget the guy. I interviewed a guy a while back on my channel, and he created the fart app for iPhone. And this guy was brilliant. Like he had all these other like not games, but apps that he had created, companies he created. Like he was just like this brilliant guy, and everyone wanted to talk to him about the fart app. And it was like, my thought was like, you can't control, like, it's not what you think. Like, other people are going to view your work. They're going to get something out of it. They're going to, have a different value. Like the thing that we as creators find to be the best, our best work, or the thing that's really good is rarely the thing that our audience and our customers, right? It's usually, a lot of times, I've written blog posts where I'm like, oh, this is like probably the shittiest blog post I've ever written, but ship it, right? And then it's like Hacker News, I got 100,000 views. I'm like, what? Why?
Yeah.
And you write some beautiful masterpiece and no one cares. So
yeah, same thing. And that's why with the whole quantity over quality thing, that's why I 100% agree with it. I think after everything that I've done creatively, it has been my experience that you make a bunch of shit, one thing does better than the rest of the things, that's the thing you pick up and work on.
Right.
Like from a business perspective, that just makes so much more sense. It's proven its viability.
All right. So step 5 then is to get over the fear, feel the fear, do it anyway, to have courage, basically. What about the final step here?
The final step is to rinse and repeat. Do it all over again.
I like it.
Over and over and over and over again. And I mean, that kind of ties into quantity over quality, but like, look, if your objective is to build a business in anything that you do, I don't think one product is viable. And if you build a successful business on one product, you're still at major risk. Anybody can come in anytime and just completely destroy your whole thing with some kind of innovation, right? Like something like the iPhone can completely change the landscape of the industry, and everything that you created is just obsolete, especially in software. It moves so fast.
Yeah.
Everything in software is just, we're having all kinds of stuff. So I think, you know, if you want to build a digital business, like not just in games, but in anything, I think it makes a whole lot of sense to have digital products. And the more products that you have, the more you can kind of stack your revenue, right? Because each one of those is an asset that you can use and you can sell and you can distribute to different platforms, and you can utilize it in a way where you can kind of use that as a stepping stone. You build 2 of them, now you got 2, right? Now you got 3, now you got 4, now you got 5. I'm definitely going to do it again. And one of the things I learned doing this whole Philophobia thing is my next project definitely isn't going to be that long. That game took me 4 years. Realistically, it was probably 6 months of development in 4 years, but a lot of shit went down in those 4 years. Like, you know, and I stopped and I started and I stopped and I started, but I think I've undergone an identity change, really. Like, I've become the finisher. I see myself as the finisher now.
Yep.
And I think I can pull that off. I could pull off a Philophobia level game in 3 months now.
Yep.
And I fully intend to do that and stack that on top of each other over and over. And I think from what I've seen, like, it makes so much more sense to just keep it going, keep the ball rolling, not quitting, whether you're successful or not. Because I know a lot of people in my community, they're like, Tim, I launched my game and I sold 10 copies. They spent 2 years on it and they sold 10 copies. That's rough, man.
It is, yeah.
But if you quit right there, that's your legacy. 10 copy. You're the 10 copy man, 10 copy woman, right? Is that what you want to be? You want to quit because you sold 10 copies? You know, like I happen to be very lucky because I built an audience before launching my game. So my first commercial game was successful, but I've made that mistake 1,000 times in other industries. I've launched digital products, startups, web applications, all kinds of stuff. And, you know, sometimes you don't realize that you're going to build this thing. You put all the value on the thing and you don't put any value on the marketing, and then you click publish and nobody's there.
Yeah, no, it's so many points in there, so many things. Have you read the book The War of Art by Steven Pressfield?
I love that book.
One of my favorite books of all time. And that's exactly, I love the part, I mean, what you were just saying there, where about the kid who sold 10 copies of his game. It reminded me of the part in the book where Steven Pressfield finishes his first novel, and then, you know, he's got the guy next door living in the trailer, that, like, his mentor guy, and he's like, I finish it, and he's like, all right, kid, you know, he's like, what do I do now? Start working on the next one, right? And it's like 100%. That's how it's got to be. And he didn't sell. I mean, he was so unsuccessful as an author until finally, like, but he just kept on working and he just kept on going, and then he became wildly successful. But
well, dude, you look at like Van Gogh or like any of these famous artists, so many people like that, like their product that you know about is not the thing. Like, you know, you mentioned Super Meat Boy. It's made by a guy named Ed McMillan, and everyone says, oh, you know, when Edmund made his first game, Super Meat Boy did 100,000, did million units or whatever. Yo, that wasn't even close to his first game. But nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. Right. Everybody, that's the game he's known for, right? He made hundreds of games for years before that game. And nobody still to this day, he's the Super Meat Boy guy, right? You talk about the Fart App guy. Like, that's, you know, you have to keep it going. And if, you know, like 10 copies, man, that sucks. I want to set a realistic expectation too, by the way. Like I said, I have a background in marketing. I built a huge audience. I launched my first commercial game. I probably am not the default. I'm not the thing that you can expect, right? If you launch your first commercial game, very likely you're not going to hit my numbers. That's not to discourage anybody, but just to say, like,
right, for
Tim
sure.
Ruswick did shit different than everyone else. Tim Ruswick has a series of skills and all that stuff. But like I said, even though I didn't learn these lessons in game design, this is my first commercial game. I've launched startups. I've launched all kinds of stuff. I helped clients marketing. I learned a bunch of stuff from failed clients projects, right? Like, all kinds of stuff. I learned these lessons over and over. It took 10 or 15 years of doing this over and over and over again. before I got to the point where I could launch something. And now that I was able to push through the fear and have the courage and do the thing and start the thing and finish the thing and all the steps we talked about, I'm going to do it over again. And number 2 is going to be less time and more effective. And number 3 is going to be less time and more effective, right? It's just over and over again. It's going to stack. It's going to stack like anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. So for gosh, so many points in here, and we're running out of time. One of them, I'd say, well, I'll give a resource quickly for everyone that's watching. Well, obviously, if you haven't at this point, go and get Tim's game. Well, let me give you a plug here. Go subscribe to Dev Dev Underground, and go check out his channel. He's got awesome stuff. And go buy the game, $10. You can afford $10. If you're interested in game development, you should buy the game so you can see the work. And so definitely support it. It's a cool game too. It's fun. The other thing I'm going to say too is what we talked about, or what Tim was talking about the you're not going to get the same results as him probably, right? So it's critical, I think, if you're going to do something, to do it in public to some degree, to build an audience of some sort, right? Like, this is where I think a lot of people create products, and I've created a lot of products and had success simply because I've had an audience. I mean, the last book that I launched, The Complete Software Developer Career Guide, it made it number 6 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. Not because, I mean, I believe it's a great book, but because I had an audience. And I was able to push that many sales from my audience, right? And so what I would say is, guys, I'll put a link here for, I've got a course on how to create a blog to boost your career, but it's a good starter to building. You need to build an audience on what you're doing, so that when you do launch your thing, you can have a greater degree of success.
100%. And really look at marketing as a valuable skill, please.
Exactly.
Everybody in the creative industry tends to say, oh, them marketing people, that marketing stuff. You need to learn marketing. You need to learn how to acquire eyeballs. It's a valuable skill in anything that you do in life.
Plus, you'll grow as a person as you're sharing, as you're teaching other people, right? If you're writing a blog, it's fine. If you're writing YouTube or doing YouTube videos, it's fine. I've had so much. I know probably you've had the same experience. So, like, one of the reasons why some people said, "Well, John, why are you doing YouTube? You're not really making much money from the YouTube part itself, or do you need to do this?" And for me, like, I've personally grown by, like, it's like I always tell people, like, the camera is my therapist. Like, I am, like, going deep and finding out things I didn't know about myself as I'm sharing with other people.
100%. Dude, I did this, like I said, with the courage thing. I feel like, this is going to sound weird, but I feel like the father of like 40,000 people. And I feel a responsibility now to be a finisher, to do the shit, to try stuff, to just be my best, most authentic self, because that's what I want to inspire in other people. And I can't be the hypocrite now. I have people watching me. It has changed me as a person. It has made me a better person. So audience, 100% from marketing perspective, but also from like a self-improvement, self-development perspective.
Yep, definitely. And to the other point I wanted to talk about with what you said here about repeating step 6 is the whole, I've had this discussion with a couple of my business partners and a bunch of entrepreneurs that I hang out with, and I've basically been talking about this idea that business really is developing a system that works and then repeating it over and over again. And I was talking about, like, the idea of, because people are always asking me, well, how can I make money? How can I start a business? I'm like, you just have to find something that works and then just repeat that over and over again. I mean, as simple as creating an ebook is one of the examples I've been using. And if you can create an ebook and you can create one a week, which you can do, you can write 15,000, 20,000 word ebook, people do it. And it only makes you, let's say, $100 a month. If you do 10 of them, that's 1,000. If you do 100 of them, that's $10,000 a month. I mean, you can literally in 2 years retire, right? Anyone could do this, right? This is like a form. And I'd say the same thing again, like what you said with game development. When you were talking about this game, I was thinking, okay, so, probably the next game you could develop in 3 months. If you do 4 games every year, and you can launch them somewhere around, I mean, you'll probably launch more, but even if you said your average launch for the next 4 games was $10,000, well, that's $40,000 you'd make. And if each one of those games brings you in maybe $500 to $1,000 a month after that, which there'll be a synergistic effect because you'll be able to sell games from games, and you'll be able, but even if it were only that, then heck, now you're building up, the first game you're making, let's say $500 a month. And then the second game after, half a year, now you've got $1,000 a month. And then after a full year, you're making $2,000 a month of passive income from those games. And you keep on stacking that, 3, 4 years, 5 years down the road, you're going to be, super successful. So, but it's just repeating it, right?
You can de-risk too. Like, you don't have to hold your fingers and hope that your games do well. Like, I made content this whole time. I make money off of YouTube and Twitch and Patreon and all kinds of stuff while I'm making games. Exactly. I figured out a way to get paid while I make the game and then get paid when I make the game. Right? Like, if you just think about this thing, like, how can I make X amount of money per month? How can I do this? How can I not do something crazy and just quit my job and have my wife look at me like I'm crazy, or, some shit like that? Like, what can I do creatively to make it happen? I wanted to make games. I knew games were risky. So the route that I went was to create content, generate ad revenue from YouTube, generate all kinds of money from Twitch. I got affiliate income streams. I have all this different stuff that stacks on the monthly, plus the game development itself. Now I get to do what I love because I just thought about it from a logical perspective. Like, how do I do this? Not should I do this? Not is it possible to do this? How do I do this? Right. And then I made it happen.
Perfect. I love it. Great advice. Like I said, guys, if you haven't, go check out Tim's channel. It's really good. Go check out the game. Also really good. And, and follow him, see where he goes. I'm excited to keep watching and see, and and I think if you follow the advice that Tim's given you here, that you're going to be successful. And more importantly than being successful, you're going to be living a more fulfilling life, because you're going to be, there's so much that money doesn't buy. And a lot of that is just to have the ability, if you do the things that Tim talked about here, you're going to have pride in yourself, right? Because those are the things, when you are a finisher, when you accomplishing, when you start things, when you choose courage over fear, right? When you do that kind of thing, it doesn't really even matter what your results that you're getting in the outside world are, because you know that you've done the thing that 99% of people will never, ever be able to do in their life. So
100%.
All right, Tim, thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Keep it up. Can't wait to see your next game.
Awesome. See you, everybody.